Okay, let's start the session since it's
Okay,
2:20. And
okay.
okay, hello
Yep.
everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Mamta Bashir, and I will be your moderator for this breakout room. Before we begin, I would like to take a minute to go over some ground rules to ensure all our presenters and guests have a positive educational experience. We ask anyone who is not presenting to keep their cameras and mics off during the presentation. This will eliminate any background noise and distractions. If you have a question or a comment, please type it in and we will go through them at the end during our Q&A session. Presentations need to stay within their allotted time, 15 minutes. When the time is up, I will ask you, the presenter, to wrap up their points so that we can move on to the next presentation. This is to ensure that all our colleagues have time to share their research. Lastly, we would just like to remind everyone that the session is being recorded. Thank you, and now I will pass on to our first presentation. Our first presentation is Amanda Wallis and Elite Singh. Thank you very much. I hope I
Thank you so
pronounced that.
much. Thank you very much for that. And hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome. Thank you for coming to our presentation on using UDL to foster student engagement. My name is Ailey Singh, and I'm co-presenting today with my wonderful colleague, Amanda Wallace, who's waving right now. We are English as an additional language consultants within the Center for Educational Excellence at Simon Fraser University. This session is for anyone looking at how to offer inclusive ways for students to engage in online learning. We would first like to respectfully acknowledge that as members of SFU's community, we work, live, and play on unceded traditional Coast Salish lands, including the Tsleil-Waututh, Coquitlam, Squamish, and Musqueam nations. We also want to acknowledge that in this still remote learning environment, many of us are working, living, and playing on different traditional territories. We'd like to invite you to take a moment and think of the lands that you are on today and the people who have come before us. Here are the outcomes for today's session. We'll let you quickly look at these on your own. This is a really brief overview, but we do have a lot of useful resources for you to explore that we'll share very soon. And here is the agenda for today. We're going to start off with some definitions before looking at an overview of the Universal Design for Learning principles for engagement. And then we'll offer some ways that you can apply these principles to foster online engagement in your own contexts. Amanda is putting the link in the chat right now for our resource booklet. So we thought it might be helpful to take a moment to reflect on some questions around engagement to begin with. We hope that this will help with reflecting forward as we move through this short presentation and beyond. So please take a moment and think about what engagement means. How do you engage students online? How is that different from engagement in the face-to-face environment? What are some successes that you've had recently with engaging students online? Have there been any challenges? I'm sure there have been. Think about how we've all experienced engagement online in the last 15 months. How has that informed and how will it inform our teaching work moving forward? So in defining engagement or starting to think about it, you may have thought of ideas referring to the degree of attention, curiosity, interest, optimism, and passion that students show when they're learning or being taught, which extends to the level of motivation they have to learn and progress in their education. And extending this theme, we know that sustained student engagement functions as a facilitator of student learning. It leads to meaningful outcomes. It prevents students from dropping out, and it prevents boredom and a lack of respect for authority. When you're online especially, it's important that students are engaged and motivated. And for more of this, over to you, Amanda.
Thanks, Ailey. So we know in pre-pandemic times, online courses were often or have been perceived as being less engaging than those in the face-to-face environment. And this is illustrated by data that was gathered in British Columbia prior to our pivot to emergency remote instruction last March. Now, with the pivot to online instruction, this perception has appeared to have gained a little bit more traction, in part because the courses that were pivoted online were not designed for the online environment, nor were instructors used to teaching in that format. So it's not unsurprising that the issue of engagement has been amplified in the last 15 months, and it is, after all, a major theme of our symposium here. A colleague at UBC, Jody Martin, expressed well the feeling when an enthusiastic approach has been taken by instructors only to be met with blank faces or no engagement at all. Conversely, from the perspective of students, we know that they're experiencing feelings of isolation, there's loneliness, a lack of authenticity in perhaps forced group work or the breakout rooms, and the absence of some nonverbal modes of communication, such as tone and gestures, that are particularly important for our linguistically diverse students. All of these factors can impact the socio-emotional learning of our students. And so the data we're seeing from emerging studies coming out of this pandemic and hearing anecdotally from students and colleagues advocates for an online learning environment that's humanized, personalized, individualized, proactive, and present. And so the million-dollar question here is, how do we accomplish that? So one way that we found in our work to kind of address issues of engagement is by applying the principles of universal design for learning, UDL, to course design. And this is a framework that seeks to improve and optimize teaching and learning for all of our students. It allows instructors to be proactive by creating multiple means of engagement, expressions, and action. So we're not going to be able to provide an in-depth exploration of the UDL framework in the time we have today. Our attention is to provide a brief overview with a specific focus on that first pillar, multiple means of engagement. But first, I'll give a broad overview here. So the UDL principles are based on this three-network model that you can see on the slide. And it takes into account the variability of all learners, including learners such as culturally and linguistically diverse students who have been relegated to the margins of our educational systems. These principles guide the design of learning environments that give all learners equal opportunities to learn. It also provides our instructors with a blueprint for creating instructional goals, methods, materials, and assessments that work for everyone. It's not this one-size-fits-all model, so to speak, but it offers flexible approaches that can be customized and adjusted for individual needs. And one of the things that Ailey and I really like about the UDL model is that it aims to change the design of the environment rather than to change the learner, putting the onus on the learner. Do keep in mind that UDL guidelines are not meant to be prescriptive or formulaic. Rather, they're a set of suggestions. You can, of course, mix and match the guidelines according to your specific contexts. And these ideas from BC campus show examples of how these three principles can be put into practice in your classroom, and why, the what, and the how of learning, touching upon those aspects. And as I said, today we're only going to focus exclusively on that first pillar, multiple means of engagement. So, looking more closely at this first principle that's connected with the affective systems, the why of learning, which is related to multiple means of engagement, we can see that in order to develop purposeful, motivated learners, instructors should provide options for recruiting interest, options for sustaining effort and persistence, and options for self regulation. We do know that our students differ markedly in ways in which they can be engaged or motivated. For example, some of our students are highly engaged by spontaneity and novelty, while others can be disengaged, perhaps even frightened by that aspect, preferring a little bit more of a strict routine, while other students might like to work alone, while others prefer to work with their peers. So in reality, there's not really one means of engagement that will be optimal for all learners in all of contexts. So providing multiple options for engagement, such as those highlighted on the slide here, is essential, and it will help facilitate the development of purposeful and motivated, i.e. engaged students. So I'll hand that back over to you, Ailey.
Thank you. So now, how can we move to some tips to promote best engagement practices drawing on these principles of UDL? We'd like to share today just 4 main tips. The first one is to start with a message of care. A community building activity at the start of term, such as sharing something about yourself you don't mind sharing and inviting students to do the same, can help to create community right at the beginning. Students can be encouraged to reach out to their peers to create a support group and or make a chat or study group online or face-to-face, and we know that they do this anyway. And by providing links to support and resources in your course outlines or in any other means that you can, students can really feel that they are supported and acknowledged and that there's a community of care. Some students may not even be aware of the existence of these services. Some examples of the supports at SFU where we are include the Center for Accessible Learning, the Student Learning Commons, Health and Counseling Services, Financial Aid and Awards, International Services for Students, the Indigenous Student Center, and the Sexual Violence Support and Preventative Office. By explicitly sharing these links to these services, you may well be supporting students without even knowing it. Also, by doing so, you're creating an environment where learners feel safe and they feel motivated to push themselves beyond the baseline expectations. In other words, you're supporting risk-taking in learning. The second tip is to create clear, specific goals that are understandable to students, including for chat, for breakout and discussion groups, as well as for assignments. By creating clear and specific goals, possibly with the learners themselves, a context can be created in which learners can be genuinely engaged. Allowing time for materials to be absorbed, reflected on, and understood allows everyone the time needed to properly understand and synthesize the content. When students can relate to the content through prior learning experiences and perspectives, they become engaged and they become invested in learning. So how can you do this? You can do it by giving students the tools that they need. For example, sharing rubrics in advance, giving them guidelines, and having regular check-ins to make sure that everybody's on track. You can pace the delivery so that students have time to digest what's being said, especially if they're looking at a slide or reading something while the instructor is talking. So this is where pre-recorded lectures can be really helpful. And presenting the options for students to make their own personal connections to the learning goal. Over to you, Amanda.
Thanks again, Ailey. So our third tip is to present flexible assessment options. Offering options for learners can demonstrate offering options for how our learners can demonstrate what they know encourages creative mastery of those high-level learning goals. So as instructors are designing their courses, we encourage them to ask themselves, is my assessment flexible, providing multiple options for learners to showcase their knowledge? Does my assessment demonstrate the actual knowledge of my learners? Related to this is the topic of feedback. So instructor feedback to students on any type of work that's being assessed should ideally be progress-oriented, offered in a timely way, and such that it encourages learners to persist through those difficulties or those challenges that they're having with the work. Students can also be encouraged to provide feedback to each other, and information gathered from these feedback sessions can be helpful for instructors as they make adjustments to upcoming materials and methods. Our final tip that we offer up today is to incorporate authentic and relevant examples, which helps recruit learner interest towards achieving learning goals. Instructors can ask themselves, are the examples that I offer relevant to the targeted learning goal? Are there options for learners to include their own relevant examples? By presenting the option for students to make their own personal connections to the learning goal, the course content becomes more relevant and transferable for students. As well, we hope that instructors would also consider providing model examples of assignments, which will help make these expectations clear so learners know where to focus their efforts. And this can be done by providing an example and a non-example for an assignment and highlighting the key components and really making those expectations clear. So these are just some tips for designing an engaging learning environment. And we know, having heard from colleagues in the classroom, that the challenges that the past year and a half has brought on, seeing rows of black tiles on the screen and the feelings of disconnection that can arise when teaching in the online environment. But the UDL framework is something we think that can alleviate this, and it can help guide the design of your courses and help facilitate classes where students are interested, engaged, and motivated. So as we wrap up the presentation, we leave you with a question to think about, and we'd be happy to dive more deeply into this in our discussion later. What options can you provide learners to increase their interest, motivation, and engagement?
Finally, we do have a resource booklet, and I think Amanda's putting the link in the chat once again, or you can email us. So all that remains now is to say thanks so much for coming. We're happy to answer any questions later. And that's it from us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda and Elliot. That was a very nice presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next presenter. We'll move on to the next presenter, and we will later attend the QA sessions. So our next presenter is Mr. Sirius Tabrizi.
Okay, thank you very much. I was the last person, but okay, no problem. Let me.
Yes, actually, because our next presenter didn't come in, so.
Okay, no problem. Actually, let me upload my PowerPoint. Actually, I have a problem in my computer, meaning that my computer that doesn't support camera and PowerPoint together. So I have to close PowerPoint, close camera, and then start to explain my PowerPoint. Okay, no problem?
Okay, that will be great. No issue.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for this opportunity for my presentation. I'm Cyrus Tabrizi from Faculty of Education, University of Windsor. So for this session, I will talk about main strategies for developing critical literacy to increase students' learning in international online higher education. Actually, my agenda in this presentation, it's 4 important subjects. The first is globalization and education, Bloom's taxonomy, critical literacy, and finally, main strategies in terms of critical for developing critical literacy. In terms of globalization, actually in 2014, I published a paper in terms of connection between neoliberalism, neoconservatism, and critical democracy in education. In this paper, I focused to two main, important subjects in globalization and education: privatization and marketization. Based on this paper, I believe, and I try to explain, neoliberalism and neoconservatism support privatization and marketization in education. And sometimes some authors believe now education is a kind of business in the world, and people has more money, they receive good certificates from universities, from high-ranking universities, then they are able to find good job in their life. The second important issues in terms of globalization is educational organizations with a global approach, meaning that we have to define our vision, mission, strategies, and techniques. For example, in terms of University of Windsor, introduced itself like the University of Windsor is a progressive student-centered university where the challenges of communities and of the world in transition inform the education we provide, the research we do, and create endeavors we pursue. In this kind of vision, for example, University of Windsor focused two important issues: student-centered learning and international approach or global approach. Bloom's taxonomy, I'm sure you have enough information about Bloom's taxonomy, just I prefer to explain some important issues here. Bloom's taxonomy, actually Bloom's introduced a model for learning outcomes and introduced 6 important levels. The first is remember, meaning that recognize and recalling facts, understanding, and apply. Based on my PhD dissertation and postdoc research in terms of 3 countries, Canada, Turkey, and Iran, 2 Islamic countries and 1 developed countries or Catholic countries, I noticed in pre-secondary and even in post-secondary, in BA level, professors and university prefer to focus on 3 primary levels of Bloom's taxonomy, meaning that remember, understand, and apply. But the main objectives for critical literacy and for critical literacy for international students is upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy, meaning that analyze information or data and evaluate or judging the values of information or ideas, and finally create, meaning that combining parts to make a new whole. Absolutely, for example, in PhD dissertations, or sometimes in master thesis, we witness some analyze, evaluate, and create some subjects. But in BA, I'm sorry to say, in these 3 countries, professors utilize from primary levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Critical literacy, I brought 3 definitions in terms of critical literacy. One of them from Sardialo, 2014. He described critical literacy as a set of practice and civic competencies that help learners develop a critical awareness that texts represent a particular point of view while often silencing others. And the second definition is from Shaw, 2011, describe critical literacy as analytic habits of thinking, reading, writing, speaking, or discussing. And in this paper, critical literacy will be considered as an approach to understanding and challenging text through analyzing and discussing the roles, the powers, cultures, class and gender plays in the message. So just in this area, I prefer to say in terms of critical literacy, the analysis is not connected with assumption that multiple perspectives exist and can be influenced the author's and reader's experience. So in terms of main strategies, meaning that now I prefer to focus to fundamental issues of my paper. Actually, the first main strategy for developing critical literacy to increase students' learning in international and higher education is critical pedagogy. Critical pedagogy for the first time. Maybe Karl Marx introduced this kind of pedagogy, but in education system, Freire from Brazil introduced critical pedagogy involves creating classroom in which teachers and students engage in dialogue so that they can learn together. It's an important thing for international online education, because the students are able to share their opinion, and exactly in terms of developing countries, because many developing countries, their governors and governments are one-party government, and sometimes is same my home country, a supreme leader dictates his opinion to different levels of society. So critical pedagogy open an opportunity for other students from as international students to share their opinion and learn to talk with other people and share their opinions. The students learn to think critically about their own beliefs and opinions. It is so important again for some developing countries, because for examples from again, I prefer bring some examples from my home countries, because the supreme leader and the religion country, the religion government dictates some ideas and beliefs to students, and these students sometimes are not able to consider their opinions. But based on this critical pedagogy, students learn to check their beliefs and even improve them and or change them. And finally, as a student, engage in reading and analyzing tests. That goal is to identify possible underlying message. So in critical actually pedagogy, the goal of critical literacy is not to engage students to be against the agenda, but rather to recognize it. For example, I'm as a person from Islamic countries, I must know, okay, this is a religion, and I'm able to think about its roles, its issues, and sometimes maybe I change my opinion about some issues, about some new topics. So the second strategy for developing critical literacy is philosophy approach. In philosophy approach, I'm as an affiliate professor at the University of Tehran in Iran, my home country, and I'm teaching some courses to grad students, master student and PhD student there. And each semester I request to answer 75 questions on the website and receive the certificate about their philosophy approach. For myself, I certainly believe for critical literacy, we need a more, critical philosophy approach. For examples, in this table, you see the purpose, learners, teachers, concept or keywords, and method of teaching and learning. For myself, I'm as a reconstructive adult education philosophy approach. You see here some definition, for example, in terms of learners, equality with teachers in learning process. And if you see teachers, the teacher's duty in their classes is coordinator suggests but doesn't determine direction for learning, meaning that teachers in this kind of classes utilize from pull system, not push system. In push system, in many countries utilize from push system, meaning that they start to teach some subject in terms of mathematics, history, geography, or science, and other issues. But in pull systems, professors or teachers prefer to find students' talents and help them to improve their, talents and achieve, good quality knowledge about this area. So the next, meaning that strategy, is media. Media is important issues in the world. Media, for example, is TV, radio, cinema, and some websites. Now we receive many information from all over the world, and friends or families prefer to share some information, and sometimes if you check them, we notice some of them is fake news or some important issues in terms of post-truth is important because some groups or political groups or religion groups or religious person prefer to focus to some issues and develop that one. But students with learning critical literacy, critical pedagogy, and with a philosophy, reconstructive philosophy approach, this paper was able to say, okay, what's the reference of these, for example, material? According to media, media is a good instrument for young people because empowers the student in terms of identifying and resisting or challenging, manipulation and domination by others. A student could be exposed the media representation of race, ethnicity, social class, and cultural difference. For example, maybe 2 weeks ago, we witnessed an accident at the London, Ontario, because I was at the London, Ontario at the Western University for 5 or 6 years. And sometimes I prefer to check their news and noticed a racist person, killed a family in this city, and then students start to check this news and find some information about race, ethnicity, social, and other issues. And the last, strategies, in my opinion, is kind of assessments. We have three kind of assessments: assessment for, assessment as, and assessment of. I'm sorry to say, based on my research again, I noticed in these three countries, Canada, Turkey, and Iran, professors and teachers in pre-secondary and post-secondary utilize from assess for and assess of. Assess for learning, meaning that it's a type of formative assessment utilized by teachers in order to gain an understanding of their students' knowledge and skills. According to the definition of learning refers to knowledge, skills, values, behavior, and behavior is so important. And exactly in Western university professors or in their school system, they never focus to this important factor. So assessment of learning is a summative assessment used primarily to compare students and report progress. Okay, we use number 1 and number 3 in our education system, but assessment as learning is a formative assessment which focus on teaching a student that metacognitive process. Meaning that this section of assessment support critical literacy, critical pedagogy, and for this kind of issues, we need different kind of university, meaning that critical university. I remember in 2015, actually, let me check. Tiana Lawhead published a paper, a book in terms of critical university. And I certainly believe this book changed my opinion about the education system. And I'm so thank you very much for Dr. Montgomery, the Dean of Faculty of Education, because he introduced this book for me. And after studying, I found, even though I published in 2014, as I explained, a paper in terms of connection between neoliberalism, neoconservatism, and critical democracy in education. But this book arranged my opinion in terms of new method for teaching and learning, exactly about international students.
Hi, Sirius.
Yes.
Sorry to cut you in. Sorry, we have crossed actually 15 minutes. Can
Yeah,
we
exactly. I
wrap
finished. Thank you very much. I'm on time. Don't worry
I'm
about
sorry.
that.
I'm sorry for
Anyway,
that.
thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions or comments, I'm ready to hear. And, thank you very much for your time.
I would like the guests to please share their questions in the QA section. So we do have a couple of questions, so we can start from there. Just a minute. The first question is from Anna to Elith and Amanda. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We
The
can hear
first
you.
question is from Anna to Elith and Amanda. She was wondering if you could share the views about gamification related to higher education.
Anna, if you're here, why don't you go ahead and unmute and tell us a little bit more about your question, and I'll try and find it in the chat. But if you're here, please go ahead and just let us know what your question is.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi. That was a very nice presentation. Thank you. I'm sorry I was late because, as I said, my presentation had finished just before, so I got into the session late, and I couldn't really follow everything. So I was wondering if you address this topic of gamification, because it seems to be usually a good strategy to keep students engaged in online learning. Yeah. And even like the most basic quizzes, like when I use quizzes, for example, students are often thrilled. And at the end of the class, when I ask them what they enjoyed or what they learned about the class, they usually mention the quiz part. They say, oh, that was fun, that was engaging. So I was wondering what you would like to say about it.
Thank you so much. That's a great question, and it's a gamification of teaching and learning is it's not a new topic, but in the online environment, particularly in the last 15 months, it's something that we do include in the longer version of our talk. We do touch on ways to engage students at the beginning, throughout the course, and so on. So using online tools like Kahoot or Mentimeter, or even the quiz function within the LMS is something that we do think is a really good idea, especially as a check-in at the beginning. So in today's talk, we very briefly mentioned the importance of checking in as an act that you can do to make sure not only that your students are following along with the content, but also as an act to just check in and make sure that they're doing okay in this remote environment. And one of the ways that you can do a check-in is just by having a very quick quiz at the beginning and making it fun, because you know, learning should be fun, and learning in higher education is included there. It should be fun. So I think gamification is a great strategy, as long as it's done in a principled way, you know, not just for the sake of doing it, but it can be done just to lower the affective filters, for example, to make students feel comfortable, to kind of get them in an easy way into the topic of the lecture or the topic of the class. And it's a way of kind of reinforcing the material. So it serves multifunctions, and I think it's a great idea. And in terms of its connection to UDL, you know, one of the principles of UDL, the overriding principles, are to offer diversity, choice, and flexibility. And I think thinking about ways that you can engage your students, including gaming, is a fabulous idea. So thank you for bringing that up. And Amanda, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Not particularly. I think you nailed it on the head there when saying there's just a lot of great parallels, or, you know, gamification lends itself to UDL. And I've been to some other presentations here at, I think yesterday at the symposium, and they highlighted some of the kind of the technical or the applications that you can use in the online environment. There's like Kahoot, Mentimeter, I've got a list here, Quizlet, Tiny Cards. And so I really think, as Ailey said, if designed properly, they can reach a really broad set of your students who have really diverse ways of interacting with the content.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Just want to add that our students are like gamers, you know, they're like a generation of people who are very keen on video games. So it seems that it seems to be natural for them somehow.
Yeah. And I think harnessing that interest is a really golden opportunity for instructors, you know, just harnessing what students enjoy doing and using that. And I know I can't cite anything off the top of my head, but I know that there's a lot of work happening right now with gamification, particularly in language learning, but across the board in all disciplines. So it'll be really interesting to see what comes out in the future, in the near future and the long-term future as well.
Yeah.
Just out of interest, where are you, Anna?
I'm in Brazil.
Ah.
Yeah, I was just where Paulo Freire is from. So I was just addressing the question to Sirius now. Is that okay if I say it out loud?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, of course,
yeah.
Anna.
Okay. Well, Sirius, thank you for your presentation. It was very mentally thrilling, you know. Very interesting, food for thought. My question is to whether you would think it is possible to relate SDGs 4, the United Nations goals, you know, for education, to adopting like a critical pedagogy, to adopting like Freire's ideas.
I believe you're muted.
Yeah. Seriously, I guess you're muted.
Thank you very much for these great questions. Do you know, based on my research, I collect some information in terms of critical universities, because critical universities follow critical pedagogy, critical literacy, critical discussion, do you know, and critical, question in their classes. I noticed, do you know, in Canada and in the United States, some universities follow these, strategies, and they are so successful in their, education system. Yeah, sometimes, as I explained, because based on neoliberalism and neoconservatism, sometimes never support this kind of issues. For example, now I'm doing a research with one of my colleagues in terms of terrorism. Some leaders of terrorist groups studied in Western countries, but their education system were not able to change their opinion because they utilized from push system and just transferred some knowledge, science, I don't know, mathematics to these people. And for as I told you in terms of uh, you know uh, assessment of learning, metacognitive is important for us because based on metacognitive education systems, education systems are able to open some question for people that your thought is correct or not. And I believe in this century we have to follow these strategies.
Thank you.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Oh, okay. You are
Yes.
so welcome. Actually, here,
Yes, sir.
yeah. Thank you, Anna, for your comment.
Yeah, I think uh, I do have a question. I hope it's okay being an MC.
Mhm.
Because I am an international student here
Mhm.
at University of Windsor. What do you think is the best way to study or to educate ourselves? Because I mean, actually, being an international student, I'm in a different culture, different background, and everything is new for me here. And studying here in a different country with laptop, it's quite depressing. So, what do
Mhm.
you think could be the motive? What could be the things that motivates us to study more or we get more involved in this pandemic?
Yeah, exactly. It's the main question for international students because Dr. Raidot and when I was PhD students, we did the research in terms of Chinese students and their real motivation for education in the Canada. And we noticed the first item motivate a Chinese student to study in Canada is immigration process because they prefer, for example, after finish master, they apply for immigration and receive Canadian passport. The second reason can be English language because now English language is a global language and Chinese students prefer to improve their English language for myself, and even in terms of Indian students, because at the St. Clair College, I have many Indian students, and even at the University of Windsor, they told me, we pay a lot of money to receive the master certificate or PhD certificate from Canada, but we believe, for examples, in our home country, we are able to achieve this knowledge, these certificates, with maybe 1 out of 10, with 10% of this money. And sometimes, ranking is important, if you receive the certificate from here. In terms of, marketization, uh, it's okay. Canadian education system is the one of the best education system in the world, and their certificates is acceptable everywhere. The second reason, you in Canadian education systems, you will able to find the correct method for study and research. In my home country, I studied BA in management, MBA, and DBA, and I was 14 years as a university professors. And after immigration to Canada, I changed my fields and I went to the Faculty of Education, and I start from master degree you know. And I believe this education system changed my opinion about teaching and learning. You know, And one of my suggestions is CTL is a wonderful place for international students to learn something about teaching method. I received a certificate here. Its name is Foundation of University Teaching. Fundamentals of University Teaching. After passing a 3-credit course, I wrote a thesis in terms of my philosophy approach. And believe me, this certificate and this course changed my teaching life. In my opinion, please continue your master and PhD in Canada.
Yes, of course.
Sure.
Of course, I do intend to do that because I'm from a South Asian country. I'm from Bangladesh, basically. So in our country, having a degree from abroad is very important, especially for jobs. Otherwise, we lag behind our jobs or corporate jobs. So initially, that was my reason to go back to online learning, study a master's degree again. But coming here, I see there is a lot of openness, values, and different cultures which we can easily adapt to, and which is really nice, actually. Which is really nice. It's a good change. It's a good change.
Exactly. University of Windsor is so friendly university, because before here I was at the Western University in London, Ontario. Here, so warm, has a warm atmosphere. You will find some good friends and people, because my the foundation of my research is learning organization, according to Peter Senge's opinion. Exactly, University of Windsor is a example of learning organization, meaning that you learn many things about your fields. As I told you, for example, CTL, you are able to receive many courses there without paying any money, and it is some excellent, in my opinion, opportunity.
Yes, that is an excellent opportunity. And I think people in Canada are really nice and very welcoming, whether it be in different provinces, that doesn't matter. But
Exactly, I agree.
Culture to welcome people, diversity is what actually encourages us to come here.
I certainly agree with you, because my parents and my brother live in Germany, and my mom is German citizen, and my brother and my father. And I received a permission from Dortmund universities to continue my education there. But I believe Canadian society is much better, because it's a multinational, multicultural, multilingual. Yeah.
Yes.
I certainly agree with you.
Yes. Does anyone have any other questions?
I had a question, actually, Mamata, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yes, sure.
Just to go back to your question, when you were asking about studying in Canada,
yes,
I was interested in hearing more about your story, really, and in hearing more details about really specifics about your question, about whether you were asking, and maybe I can tell you what I understood from your question, and you can correct me, but I thought you were asking about the best ways to study in Canada. Is that right?
Yes.
And what I don't want to appear nosy, but what were you what motivated you to ask that question?
Particularly because since we are a batch that we are actually struggling in pandemic, and we're always online. We didn't get the real physical campus life. What is it is to be in a physical campus in Canada? What's life out there with diverse people, diverse? So we often wonder that what that would be like, what that culture would be like, because we're in a room doing classes alone. at the end of the day.
Yes.
There are some programs, but those are all virtual at the end of the day. So is there any other way where we can engage with more people, communicate with more people? Because that is also a part of learning, because online learning, education, overall education in abroad is overall it's an experience of people, of values, and of course of books and studies as well. But yes, the overall experience matters at the end of the day.
Thank you so much for that extra detail, and thank you for asking that question. I think that you're not alone in feeling those kind of yearnings of,
Yes.
I wonder what this experience would be like face to face. And there's no question that the things that we miss in the face to face world are those social engagement pieces where we meet our friends, we talk to them, we go for a walk, even standing in line getting a coffee, we have this opportunity to meet and mix with other human beings, and we are social animals. And I mean, my heart goes out to many students, particularly students from other countries who, in their planning to come and study in another country, were not envisioning staying where they were and being in the same room every day. And for people like Amanda and I, we've been in the same room every day individually in our homes for 15 months now, doing our job, which is to help faculty. And part of that is help them engage with students. So first of all, really thank you for that question. And I really feel for you missing out on that experience. And I hope that you get that experience soon. And I'm a big champion of online learning, actually. I think when it's well designed and well delivered, it is not a deficit model. I think that online learning can be really fabulous. And again, with good design, there are lots of opportunities for really meaningful engagement and co-construction of knowledge. But having said that, I still think in the online environment that engagement can happen, but it takes more effort on the part of all of us. So the teaching and learning aside, I think forming communities where you can relax and you can chat and you can just talk about one another and one another's experiences and become friends. I think that's really, really important, and something that I would encourage everybody to do, even if you just suggest to one person in your classes, let's have a virtual coffee once a week, or let's have a drop-in session once a week, or let's have a chat group on our LMS. And then when you do get the opportunity to meet face to face in real life, as it were, then you at least have established a relationship where you know one another, and it can be very meaningful. It can be quite deep, establishing friendships online. But I think that you have to be more, I don't know what the right word is. I think you have to be more explicit and more active in setting it up.
I would say intentional.
Intentional. Thank you, Amanda. That's the right word. And so go ahead.
Just on the students' part, I think especially grad students in this environment have to be more intentional. Sorry, Ailey, I interrupted.
No, go ahead, Amanda.
Okay.
I think
I prefer to add some issue here. Based on again.
Sorry. Can we just let Amanda finish and then we'll come back to you? Oh, you're finished?
Okay.
I was just filling in, ending your thought for you, but just being intentional, like I think it's a little bit different for undergrad and grad students, but as a graduate student, yes, being much more intentional, reaching out, maybe going out a little bit outside of your comfort zone to, as Ailey said, to make those connections to your colleagues, and scheduling time in for socializing in the online environment, like the first 10 to 15 minutes before you jump into your studies is chit chat about, hey, what's up, how you're doing, then jumping into your studies, and maybe even working something out with your professor if you are having synchronous class time to that effect. I'm good.
Okay. Just I prefer to add a comment based on my research, as I explained, Dr. Wydot and I. we spent 3 years for this research and published papers to international conference papers. We noticed some international students, for example, from China, India, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey. These students prefer to make a colony in Canada and stay in this colony. For example, Chinese students share their house with Chinese students, go to the Chinese restaurants, speak with Chinese language, and even at the university. So one of the important things is the communication. When I came to Canada, I cut my relationship with my home country's people for 5 or 6 years. Just I joined the Canadian society, and even I found some good friends from Canadian society, because this kind of communication improved my English language, changed my mind about other people. Be careful about this issue. If you want to come to Canada, you must increase your communication, because language is so important, and people who English is their second language, they prefer to stay in a colony, and this is some dangers for international students.
Yes, I agree with you on that. Thank you very much.
You're
Thank you
so
very much.
welcome.
That was actually a great insight from Amanda, Elliot, and Sirius, all three of you.
Oh, you're so
very,
welcome.
it was a very beautiful presentation, each of you. The findings were really nice, and it was really interesting to watch. Thank you very much. I don't think we have any more questions today. I don't think we have any more questions today. So should we wait 5 minutes? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your sharing your opinion, and thank you for Amanda and Ilde for their wonderful comments. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And Mamata for being the
Yeah.
moderator here. Appreciate all your work.
As a chair here. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much. It's nice meeting you all. I didn't realize I didn't have my camera on.
Yeah. Are you going back to the fall, face-to-face in the fall, Mamata?
We had the notice that Master of Management program will be online next semester as well.
Wow.
So
okay.
we can go to campus, but yes, classes will be online.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a downside, but still we get to meet more people. That will be nice for a change.
Yeah.
But you can go to campus, so that's better than now, right?
Yes, that is better than now.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, if we go, we have to fill up our self-assessment form and say that we have the pass to enter the building, and then we can enter the building. But we cannot meet anyone, just do our work and just come in outside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult, but then again, it's for safety again. So that's necessary.
And yeah, I really think we're all going to be quite surprised when September comes, because I think things are going to change very quickly because the plans are already in place.
Yes.
And, suddenly it's going to be, the campus is full again and classes are going on face to face.
Yes,
so
I'm sure of that.
I think we're going to have reverse culture shock when we go back, because it's been so long working in isolation.
Yes, I think so too. We actually forgot how to communicate to each other physically.
Forgot how to be social, indeed.
Yeah.
We all
Yeah,
forgot.
I met 3 friends on Tuesday night that I hadn't seen in over a year face to face, even though we live in the same city. We hadn't seen one another, and I spent 2 hours outside with them. We went for a walk in a park, and it was really tiring.
Yeah.
And I love them. They're my friends, but it was I had that muscle, my social muscle was really withered away. So we'll have to practice.
Yes, we all have to practice on that.
Exactly.
So I think we won't have any questions anymore because there are no guests coming in. So I think we'll close for the day. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you
you.
so
Have a
much,
great
everybody.
day.
Take care. Best of luck with the next term.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for your question.
Bye, everyone.